I don't know what the cost is going to be for the metaverse, the spatial internet, the union of the two. I don't know what the cost is going to be. I don't know if this is when we welcome our new robot overlords. I don't know if this is when we all go into the matrix. I don't know if this is when we achieve a unity of thinking that abolishes wars forever. I don't know. The possibilities are good and bad. And so far, humanity has shown the willingness to accept both.
Thank you for joining I Am Possible, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Leslie Shannon, who's the head of ecosystem and trend scouting at Nokia. She was an undefeated 5-time champion in the American television game show Jeopardy. So Leslie, really appreciate and you taking time being part of a humble podcast to raise awareness and educate people on frontier technologies and how it can help them. So why don't we start with your role at Nokia and what is it that you bring on board as the head of ecosystem and trend scouting?
Well, thanks, Eddie. It's a delight to be here. Thank you very much for hosting me. All around the world, people still largely know Nokia for the thing that we used to do. So let me clarify exactly what Nokia does, because that will actually get us halfway down the road of why my job exists. So Nokia is a company that's more than 150 years old, and but starting in the 90s, we really had two primary businesses. One was mobile phones, and the other was mobile network equipment. And our customers for that were the phone companies of the world, and we sell them the literal base stations that they put on towers and things to create the network. And I joined Nokia in 2000 as part of the network side. Now. The way that the handset business went was that when I first joined Nokia, the goal was to achieve 40% global market share, which is a huge, huge share. And we were almost there. And in 2006, we got it, 40% of global market share. And I'm afraid that what happened then was that Nokia, and as I said, I was in the company, but on the other side of it. But what it seemed to me was that the phone guys, they kind of took their eye off the ball at that point. There was kind of this feeling that we got there, we're done, we made it, we're finished, we've conquered this business. We don't need to look anywhere else. We can now be the ones that set the standard and say how this world goes, how mobile phones develop. That was 2006. Of course, in 2007, Apple came out with the iPhone, and I was in Finland at headquarters at the time, and I remember everybody at Nokia, and me included, were like, "Oh, this thing with lots of bells and lights. Sure, it's pretty, but it's got a terrible antenna. It doesn't have a keyboard. It's clearly a terrible phone, right?" And we were so convinced that we knew what was best for this particular device and for our customers and for our market, because the market had already told us that we were the best, that Nokia's phones got more and more into kind of technical things, but when it came right down to it, they didn't work very well. A lot of the stuff that the first iPhone had, we already did. We had touch screens, we had an app store, but they were not as directly easy to use as they were in the iPhone. Anyway, fast forward, the handset business, the Nokia handset business gets sold to Microsoft, and then Nokia Networks is left holding the Nokia brand name. So now when you see Nokia, that actually means Nokia Networks. We're a business-to-business business selling network equipment to phone companies in the world. And there are still Nokia phones out there. Those are sold under license by a company called HMD that is licensing the Nokia brand name. And it's a lot of ex-Nokia phone guys, so there is some continuity there. But anyway, so all of that is backstory for so I was in Finland for a long time, and then I came out to California in 2015. And I looked around, and I'm in Silicon Valley, and I go, oh, there is so much happening here in the world of technology that the telecommunications world is not aware of, is not paying attention to, because the telecommunications world has its head down working on its own stuff. But I knew from the experience with Nokia mobile phones, when you stop looking around, at other industries and what other industries are doing, that's when somebody comes from another industry to disrupt what you are doing. And if you're not careful, you can get the carpet ripped right out from under your feet very, very quickly. And so I made a case to Nokia executives that somebody really should be tracking all of this stuff, and it might as well be me. And so I actually created my job. And my job consists of looking at the new technical innovations that are happening in other industries that expect or will need some kind of telecommunication support, and then communicating those expectations to not only back to Nokia, but also to our customers, the phone companies of the world. So we can make sure that we're building the right networks and that we don't get cut out of whatever the next big thing is, but actually know about things early enough so that we can play a significant part in them, if not lead them directly ourselves. Because we see all kinds of innovations coming now from the chip companies, from NVIDIA and Qualcomm, and all of the things coming in terms of augmented reality and metaverse. They're all going to require some kind of network support that's different from what we built today. So we have to be there. Otherwise, others are going to come in and fill this gap.
Thank you for explaining it so beautifully and in such an humble way, because yes, I think Nokia had a 40% market share, and maybe you guys didn't find the need to look deeper and innovate, because I guess that's somehow what happens with every industry, every traditional legacy industries, because you get so consumed by what you've built that maybe you fail to look at what's happening around you, and that's when these small startups come and can create disruption. So it's such a learning for all the other industries, because as of today there is some insane convergence happening with technologies, and there is not one single technology which I can say, okay, oh, this is going to cause the greatest disruption. Though AI is right up there, but then it needs the support of like 5G. Then XR needs the support of 5G, AI, scanners to get into the metaverse. So there's this convergence which is happening, and there's this underlying technology which I think is going to cause the greatest disruption is blockchain, because they are saying they're going to go in for a decentralized world. Now that is something which it's something which doesn't go down easily with traditional companies that function in a way, in a very centralized world, because a world is centralized. Now decentralized means giving away of power. Can we just stay over there in a decentralized world, because there's metaverse and there's blockchain, there's cryptocurrency. In fact, just recently, last year 2021 blockchain, Deloitte made a report, the Blockchain 2021 report, which said or claimed that in another 5 or 10 years, fiat currency will replace tokens, cryptocurrency will replace token. So can we just stay over there and maybe explain to all these legacy industries that what needs to do, what can we do to move ahead rather than be disrupted?
Well, one of my favorite statements in this category comes from Randall Stevenson, the former head of AT&T. Several years ago, AT&T already had a TV offering, but then they bought a satellite company to offer satellite TV. And analysts were like, what are you doing? You're cannibalizing your own business here by adding the second service that just completely overlays this thing you already have. And Stevenson said, my customers are telling me that they want satellite. And he said, if I don't offer that, someone else will. And disruption means your customers are looking for something else and you're refusing to supply it. And so if you don't do it, someone else will. So sometimes when the market is moving in this direction, you have got to be the one to recognize that things are moving on from your product. And as you pointed out earlier, that is really hard for legacy companies to do, and particularly in the modern age, because the mobile phone industry, it really became an industry kind of in the 90s, and so this was all very new. And by 2006, sure, Nokia was dominating, but everything was so new that we really felt that we were at the beginning of things rather than at the end. We were not prepared for this very brand new thing that we had really pioneered and innovated to be re-pioneered and innovated from outside. But the thing that Apple did in 2007 was they changed the stakes of the game. What Apple did was they changed the paradigm. We were looking at the thing in your pocket as a telephone and judging it as a telephone. Apple, a computer company, created a computer that goes in your pocket. And when the first iPhone came out, we missed that was a paradigm shift from telephone to computer. But consumers got it. Consumers are like, oh, this is a computer in my pocket. I like this much more. Let me go for this. And that was the thing that only became clear to me, at least, very much in retrospect. And it's that kind of disruption. And it doesn't matter if you're dominating a market that is only 3 years old. It doesn't matter. If somebody else comes in with a better paradigm that solves problems better than you do, then you're in trouble. Because that's actually what it's all about, solving problems. And every new technology has in it, if it takes off, it usually has solutions to the previous wave of problems. But every new solution has within it its own problems. So, for example, now I've got my beautiful, iPhone that I carry. But the problem is now, where do I charge this thing? Because the battery is running down. So the next wave of solutions around batteries or heat. This thing gets hot sometimes, or the cost of it. This thing is crazy expensive. So those are the problems that need to be solved now, and those are the places where Apple could get disrupted.
Exactly.
Because those are now its Achilles heels. Yes.
You mentioned that you guys made the mistake of judging the phone only as a telephone when
Exactly.
Apple was projecting as a computer in a pocket. Today's generation is going way beyond. It's saying that it's gonna create a eye-wearable headset which is gonna converge your computer and your phone into, from carrying your technology to wearing a technology. So is this the transition? Is this the direction where the future is going?
Yes, absolutely. Because if you think about those three problems that I just listed, the fact that end devices with the big, heavy supercomputer, practically chips that they have in them, they are expensive, the battery doesn't last very long, and they get hot. And so, this is actually where we at Nokia are getting involved in this. We're not creating the end devices. Let me be clear about that. But you need 5G for that switch to the headset, because that actually helps solve those problems by having a much lighter chip on the end device, whatever the end device happens to be. This holds true for robots and drones and visual analytics and cloud gaming as well. To have a really small light chip on the end device, that means it's cheaper, the battery lasts longer, and it doesn't get so hot. And then once you have those things in place, once you have a smaller, lighter chip, now you can enable things like the glasses with the minimum possible processing, computer processing happening on the glasses to give them that light form factor that you need. But okay, where does all that processing go? Because clearly I need to have a lot of processing in order for a computer to help me see the world and parse it and make sense of it for me and give me the services that I want. Well, this computing, where can it sit? Well, initially, it's sitting in phones. And so a lot of the early devices that we're seeing on the head, they have a cable or at best Bluetooth that connects them to a telephone. Like for Nreal, the Nreal glasses that come out of China right now, they connect with a cable to a 5G smartphone. And a lot of the processing is done in the phone. But come on, we know that, having a cable hanging off the back of your head to a phone in your pocket, not a very good long-term solution. So the entire industry is aiming is to move that processing off of this interim position on the smartphone and into the network itself, into servers sitting in the network and now you can have a whole bank of servers and your computing has essentially become unlimited. And that's when we'll see the real magic happening. And so that's the tradition that's going to be happening kind of over the next 5 years. But it's moving this way, yes, not only because the entire human computer interface changes when you put your computing here, as opposed to still having your gaze ending on a screen, and we could talk about that separately. But the push for this is to solve these problems of heat, cost, and battery that are currently caused by smartphones. And so that's part of what's driving the move towards head-mounted devices as the primary means of interaction.
So you mentioned that Nokia is going to play a role to provide the network, the underlying infrastructure needed to drive
the 5G with the computing in it. Yes,
the conversation. In fact, I think Nokia just recently partnered with Tech Mahindra and is creating a rollout here for an enterprise 5G. So would you like to talk about 5G? How it'll create a better future? And the role of the metaverse. Maybe you could also possibly talk about the metaverse and how that's also going to add.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so taking 5G first, I mentioned this kind of supercomputer chip that we got in these end devices. What needs to happen is what I call splitting the chip. So we need to have the minimum processing on the end device, and as I said, robots and drones as well, and the rest of the processing somewhere else, and that's moving into the network. Now, once you actually have that split, how do you then maintain a unity of services? So, for example, say you wanted to be speaking to me in Hindi, and I don't speak Hindi, so my glasses could actually hear the audio of you speaking Hindi, take that audio stream, send it into the network, translate it into English, and then come back and either give subtitles or have a little audio translation in my ear for near real-time translation. And then we could talk, and it really doesn't matter what language anybody speaks. And that power, that translation power, if you have that on here, the battery necessary and the computing necessary, well, now you need to kind of put your computer, your smartphone on your head, and that doesn't really work. So by putting it in the network, that again, or you could speak Swahili to me and I would get the translation. The network is ready with the computing power for any language to language translation. And then but it has to be fast, right? If you say a sentence and then I get the translation 30 seconds later, this conversation is not going to work. So 5G has the speed. 5G has two things to it. One is high broadband. So a high, basically a big fat pipe that can carry a lot of data at once. And the other is low latency, which means very fast speeds. And in order to be able to carry enough data, and particularly high definition video, to be able to carry enough data and then to get an answer back quickly enough, it has to be 5G that is that bridge to the computing in the network. 4G is not good enough. That's why 5G is critical for augmented reality. 5G is also critical, as you mentioned, for the metaverse in all of its various flavors. The metaverse, as is being discussed now and has kind of been put on the table by Facebook, now Meta, effectively bringing that to kind of bringing it to international attention in the public sphere. They're really talking about virtual reality. They're talking about putting on a headset that shuts you off from the rest of the world, where you experience, something fabulous, another kind of universe, and the social experiences and all the possibilities in there. And that's fine, and that's great, and that's wonderful, and I love it. That when you cannot see what's going on around you, you don't move very much, and so that experience is going to be done, as it is now, will be mostly done in interior spaces, connected over Wi-Fi. I mean, that's how Oculus works today. That you don't really need 5G for. But I actually agree with John Hanke, who is the CEO of Niantic. He has very publicly been saying, don't just focus on the metaverse because that's limited. And for me, he's right. That it's being in the metaverse, the virtual reality form of it anyway. That's something, it's the equivalent of going into a movie theater. You're basically in this black box that cuts you off from the rest of the world. And you do that for a limited number of hours every day, and maybe not even every day. And you have an experience for a few hours. It's like, oh, that's great. That was completely immersive. That's wonderful. But then it ends and you come back out into the sunshine and you're back into the physical world that you move through and you interact with. For me, the far more important aspect of metaverse kind of constructions is what I call the spatial internet, which is also what Niantic is promoting, which is which is much more the augmented reality kind of headset that we were talking about just now, where you have a headset that on your face that is, you are looking at the world through it. So the computer is seeing the world the same way that you are, and you're moving through your physical world, and you are getting information and entertainment that is in context with the spatial physical world that you are actually moving through. And that is something that happens or can happen 24 hours a day. You don't need to be in this black box and cut off from everything else. So that's why I think, the spatial internet, which is kind of a cousin of the metaverse, that's going to be the thing that is far more powerful and changes the world far, far more. So these two elements are developing separately right now. So you mentioned blockchain and all of this stuff. So in that metaverse in virtual reality, Facebook said they're going to be launching Grand Theft Auto in virtual reality. Fantastic. Okay, so I steal a car in Grand Theft Auto, and then the years go on and stuff becomes more open, and maybe I can take this car in Grand Theft Auto and start driving it in Fortnite. I don't know, I'm making stuff up now. That's blockchain and digital goods and portability, interoperability, right, and portability across things. And my avatar, I have an avatar that works across multiple things. Okay, that's great all over there in that kind of virtual world. But now, how do I take digital goods that have value in that virtual world, and how do I now integrate them with my life in the physical world? That's actually going to be the question, and that I think is the much bigger picture. That I think that, yeah, and there's going to be a lot of money in this, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because I think we're getting into a world where we'll have these digital avatars, and if and when artificial intelligence comes in, those digital avatars could have autonomy, and where that goes is anybody's guess. Obviously there's the NFTs are going to create such an huge economical layer for the metaverse. There you mentioned that the spatial, it'll be divided into the spatial internet and the virtual reality. I mean, both I think will be converging, because it's not going to be the metaverse. Yes. It's just all going to be converging. In the virtual reality, yes, it's an isolating experience, but it is so potential, because even now, if it kind of tricks your motor cortex into believing that the virtual is real, when it's just plain animatics and but
I'm gonna stop you there.
Yeah, please.
I am very careful to not say the virtual world and the real world. I say the virtual or digital world and the physical world, because you know what, they are both real.
Yeah,
they are both real. When you're in virtual reality, what you experience is real to you, and and that's not like, I don't know, spend a lot of time in VR and you will understand.
Exactly. And it's
they are real experiences for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And these experiences are getting more and more real with technology such as haptic feedback and stuff like that. So we're getting into an amazing time where at one if you look at one perspective, it's super awesome because it can accelerate you into the future and of abundance. And then there's the other side is the moral ethical implication arises of today's social media company. I mean, which can the data is being collected and is being manipulated. What happens in a world when we have these AR VR glasses which has inside outside head tracking and can see everything, and on the data is being collected, where does it go, who owns the data? So these are like important conversations I think we need to have. You mentioned that you created your role at Nokia as the head of ecosystem and trend scouting. Would you like to talk about that? What is it that you have brought on board, and what are the technologies which have been implemented from in the network or the product side, if possible, with HMD? Anything that you know?
Well, the things that I'm looking at are kind of the far future. So, or kind of mid to far future. So kind of 5 to 10 years out. And so the things that are, for me, the biggest changes that I'm kind of, sending up fireworks about are exactly the sorts of things that we've been talking about: AR and VR, blockchain and NFTs, changes in robots and drones, cloud gaming, because that's a big change, and visual analytics. That's probably the one that we haven't talked about here. The ability for cameras backed up by computation in the network to see and understand what is happening, and then to have some kind of action happen in an automated way as a result of this. That's extremely powerful, particularly for enterprise applications. And just one example of visual analytics, one that I particularly like. There's a tractor company in the United States called John Deere. And about 4 years ago, they bought a company called Blue River Technologies. And what Blue River brought to John Deere was this visual analytics module that goes onto the tractors that John Deere makes that drive. Now, the tractors themselves are, they're automated. They're moving at a particular speed. Currently, there's still a human on board, but John Deere is working on getting the human to be somewhere else. And so the tractors are moving through the fields at a steady speed, and they have visual analytics looking down at the plants underneath. And they're analyzing every single plant with visual analytics. Is this the crop that is meant to be in this field, or is this a weed? And then and the way that they're doing that is, because the expensive part of this analysis is the analysis, right? It's the computing itself. So what they're doing is there's a high definition video feed that is going over 5G from the tractor to a server sitting somewhere in the network, and it's doing that analysis, and it's coming back with the labels: crop, weed. And then the tractor, while it's still over the plants, right? So that happened really fast, is then giving liquid, either water or fertilizer or herbicide to the weeds, to whatever the plant needs, specifically to that plant. And by giving just a tiny little stream of liquid instead of broadcasting to the whole field, they can reduce the amounts of liquid needed by 90%. In all of those 3 liquids that I mentioned, which is spectacular for drought-ridden places like California, where I am. We never have enough water. But it's also great for everywhere. If you're reducing the amount of herbicide you're putting into the world, fantastic. And so that's the kind of, you mentioned sustainability earlier. Visual analytics actually has a lot that it can play in the world of contributing to sustainability. And so that's another one of the big areas that I'm looking at. But what's really powerful here, and we've been talking about things that we can see, we can visualize what's going to happen. We've been talking about all these different technologies, and it's the convergence of these technologies that are really going to open up the whole next wave of, I don't even know what to call it, because we don't even know what it is yet. Back in 1993, Bill Gates was interviewed by PC World magazine, and they're like, "All right, Bill, what's the internet for?" And it's 1993, and the internet's starting to get built, but nobody's really sure what's going on with it. And he says, "Oh, what's magnificent? Just think, at any time you can read any library from any book in the world." And PC World magazine was like, "Really? is that it?" Well, of course, that was all that Bill Gates could imagine then, kind of based on the previous paradigms. what standing in 1993 he couldn't see were the convergences that would happen from not just the internet, but mobile internet and location-based information, which would then later create and charging and payment capabilities that were more decentralized and having to go through official banks and stuff. And so those things coming together created things like Google Maps, Airbnb, Uber. They were the really disruptive things. None of them came from a single technology. They came from a union of technologies. And that's going to be the thing that completely changes everything as we know it. It's not going to be a single one of these. It's going to be a union of 5G and smaller, lighter end devices and AI to do automation and computation in the networks and the older stuff, location and. And that's why today we cannot even imagine the next frontier that all of this computing is going to bring us.
Right. Yeah. We're getting into a world where there's going to be so many awesome things. It's just that we need to let go
Be
of
careful.
our old. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. So profound. That's it. I think it's just that. I mean, you nailed it. Bullseye. Yes, we need to be careful because the humanity's track record is not really good of being careful. And
on the other hand, and this is kind of cynical, but it's true. We will accept a lot if it comes in a package that gives us a lot of benefit. For example, there's this transportation thing. It's this new transportation, and it will give people autonomy and more cheaply, and they'll be able to get places faster than they ever have before. And which will just be amazing, and people will be it's going to transform people's lives. It's going to transform the way that cities are structured. It's going to completely, change humanity's relationship to physical distance. The downside is, in the United States alone, it's going to kill 35,000 people a year. I just described the automobile. All right? The trade-off that we have made to accept the automobile is the death of 35,000 people a year in the United States. And I'm sorry, I don't know the number for India, but I'm sure it's big.
It's insane.
So, the cynical truth is that if something changes, I mean, the benefits that the automobile brings are enormous. The cost is enormous. And we, as sentient, cognizant beings, have chosen to accept that cost. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that that's the way we work. And I don't know what the cost is going to be for the metaverse, the spatial internet, the union of the two. I don't know what the cost is going to be. I don't know if this is when we welcome our new robot overlords. I don't know if this is when we all go into the matrix. I don't know if this is when we achieve a unity of thinking that abolishes wars forever. I don't know. The possibilities are good and bad. And so far, humanity has shown the willingness to accept both.
Wow. So the last few lines which you said, I mean, it's I need to. I mean, take those. Yeah, because it's the fact, and I hope that the entire world gets. Understand. And I wish that, because I mean, what you said, maybe wish we can possibly, if we are alive in another 10 years, I hope we are. I would love to have the conversation, maybe repeat that what you said, and maybe take that and riff from there for the conversation, because I think from here till this end of this decade is going to be crazy fun ride. Plus, obviously, it's going to bring the dangers of technology if we do not, as a society, direct it in a way which is beneficial for humanity. Talking about these exponential growth of technology, there's this camp such as Elon Musk, and then the late Stephen Hawking, and many have tried to raise the urgency of looking at AI as an existential threat, and though the technology is a tool which is has always helped us, and I do believe that it's not the technology per se, but it's the humans, the choice that we choose to create a technology. But again, we're going back to the statement that we humans do not have a good track record. What would you predict for India? What would be the risk and the opportunity for India and the world?
Okay, let me tell a side story here first. I spent a long time in Finland, and in fact, my husband is Finnish, and I have Finnish citizenship, and so I know a lot about Finland and the history there. And Finland's largest trading partner when the wall came down in 1990 was the Soviet Union, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, Finland collapsed. The Finnish economy went into an absolute tailspin, and Nokia at that point, this was right before mobile phones started. Nokia had a lot of different divisions. Nokia used to do rubber. There were rubber boots and car tires and televisions and computers, and but the business instantly, just took a huge nosedive, and actually the CEO of Nokia committed suicide. I mean, things were really bad, and so the people who were left were like, okay, we have to make this work. And so they sold off everything except the fledgling mobile phone and mobile phone network industries. And everything else, they let go. And they're just like, we're just going to put all of our chips in this basket. At the same time, the Finnish government said, all right, we're a small country. We have a lot of trees. There is not much else that we have other than our people. And so what can we do to make sure that we don't go through a recession like this again? We can invest in our people. And so Finland doubled down on its education. And at the same time that Nokia, a small company at the time, was ramping up its mobile phone business, the Finnish government was investing heavily in engineering education for Finns. And there was this really happy convergence there. And Finland and Nokia ended up becoming, from this agricultural backwater, look at where Finland is on the globe. It has always been a poor country. From an agricultural backwater, Finland actually came to lead a lot of technology, and it still holds that role and that reputation in the world today, even though Nokia itself kind of hit some rocks. Having gone through that experience, looking at India, I say, and looking at the importance that is placed in India on education, that is the path to go. That is the path to go, because regardless of what natural resources you have, India has people. India has a lot of people. Finland only has 5 million people. And they were able to work wonders. By investing in education and investing in, and not just education, but entrepreneurial education, I think that's the path for India and Indian business, which it's already obviously begun. Companies like Tech Mahindra and Infosys are already very dominant, but so much more is possible. And I think in the AR and the coming VR worlds, where the rules have not yet been written, there is actually the possibility here for anyone right now, anyone in the world to ultimately lead this, because the standards have not yet been created, the paradigms have not yet been set. Meta, Facebook, is over there trying, but they haven't done it yet because this is all so small. Whoever comes out first with the solution that is most win-win and most solves the problems of end users, that's going to be the thing that takes off. I think there's every possibility for that to come out of India.
Right. I mean, you said it so rightfully. I mean, education. We need to invest in the people, and education is the key. And entrepreneurial education, nudging the ecosystem, and that's the reason I keep on having a conversation with the government and the stakeholders, because of the internet, knowledge which is easily accessible on the internet, and which is free in the forms of MOOCs. You don't need to, you don't specifically need brick and mortar education. All you need is a desire and intent, and if you have the desire and intent, there is knowledge, and you can connect with anyone in the world and create businesses. So there's so much opportunity. It's just that we need to support, nurture, nudge the AR, VR, or the entrepreneurial community who's building technology? Because I mean, if we build something good, the country's got a bright future. Leslie,
Exactly.
my last question to you. As someone who's been invested in the space, who understands and who has a crystal ball of sorts and can kind of peek into the future, because that's what you do with, scouting trend. What would you forecast for 2022, this year, and beyond? Because we still stuck with COVID and Omicron still there. So 2022 and beyond for India and the world.
I know. Okay, this is actually the hardest question of all. Because in the work that I do, I've got a really clear view of 2030, right? Where you and I both have glass. In fact, we're not looking at screens anymore. We're looking at, there's a hologram of you sitting on the sofa across from me, and there's a hologram of me in whatever room that you're in, and we're speaking directly to each other's holograms. Eminently clear by 2030, no problem. 2025, I'm not sure if the hologram is there yet. The thing is, all of the things that I've been talking about, all of the building blocks for them are there today. The chips are being worked on by Qualcomm and NVIDIA. The technology for the holograms is being worked on by all kinds of companies. Microsoft Mesh is talking about their hologram kind of thing. We've got Facebook over here busily working on getting the Metaverse going. We've got Niantic over there busily working on getting the Spatial Internet going. They're all trying to enable developers. You've got Niantic with their Lightship platform that they opened in November. That opens up the three-dimensional mapping of the world to developers of the world, which is a really important thing to get a lot of small coders going. All of these different pieces, these are all the different technical building blocks, and they're all on the table. And now it's just a question of, in fact, maybe building blocks isn't the right, maybe it's jigsaw puzzle pieces. So I can see the picture in my mind. It's like I've got the picture on the box of the jigsaw puzzle. That's what it's going to look like. And the jigsaw puzzle pieces are all on the table, I think. Now comes the hard work of putting them together. And so we're going to start with the outline first. And start with the border of the jigsaw puzzle first, and then it'll be filling in the middle, and it may be, so I don't know how complete that jigsaw puzzle is going to be by the end of 2022. I don't know how complete it's going to be by 2025, but it will be done by 2030. That much I can tell you. But things I will be looking at this year. I'm going to be looking at because there's several different threads here. If you kind of get away from the technology and kind of step back, there's the human thread. So kind of social, people connecting to other people. How is that developing? There's the economy thread. So NFTs, blockchains, how is that developing? And then there's the I guess the AR, VR, the actual technology of that thread. How is that developing? And these are all different threads, and they're all moving at different speeds and different paths. And I think one of the really depressing things about COVID has been how willing so many members of humanity are willing to just completely reject science. So that's been very depressing. So we're not done with dealing with the human animal and all of its foibles, and so which is a way of saying I think technology is going to move at one speed, but humanity is going to move at a different speed, and it may be behind. It's probably not going to be ahead. So when all these things come, and then when they're actually accepted and used, two different things.
Lovely. Thank you, Leslie. Really appreciate you taking time and sharing your insights. Yes, I think we're living in a very exciting space. COVID has created so much disruption, but one thing was very, very clear. I don't think I think because of COVID, technology got accelerated. What could have taken 10 years has happened in a very short span of time. And I feel that the only way to accelerate the future and bring the future closer is for collaboration and to collaborate. So far, I think all of the industries and individuals are creating patents and working in silos. I think we need to make way for the decentralized world. We say the metaverse. I think metaverse, the building block, is a decentralized, interoperable platform, because when Sir Tim Berners-Lee designed the internet, it was supposed to be decentralized, but it's become completely centralized, with paywalls, and so I think we are laying the infrastructure of the next evolution of a computing, and it can be fantastic. It can be super fantastic. It's the choice that we have to make today, and we have to make those right choices, and we'll have a brighter future. So thank you for being part of the show, and yes, I would love to have a round two with you. So really appreciate. So to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you, Leslie. Really appreciate this.
Thank you so much.